What do you say?
The time I say counting.
Okay, I can see Olivia now.
Oh, my back.
Recording in progress.
Okay, then. Why is the audio interfering? Okay, let's give other people like 5 minutes to join. Start by 2:10.
No. I laugh.
Hello.
What about now? Well, nothing is playing. Okay, so we're going to start. Let me start sharing my screen now. So on my desktop, I have IEEEXtreme slides, and I've already created like some slides for this section. I created them in a .py file, so I'll use the code editor to open it. So I'll run my terminal. cd into my, I'll try to cd into this directory, that's IEEE directory, cd desktop. Cd into the IEEE directory.
So this folder you're opening now, do we have it?
No, you don't have it. I will share it after the class, but hello?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll use the file, the tab completion to complete this. So let me list the content of, you guys can see that it's the same thing with this GUI. So the first thing on our outline is use of, sorry, why function. So I open the definition.py file, and to open it, I need a code editor, and the code editor I have here is VS Code. And to open a code editor from the terminal, you use the command code followed by the file you want to open. So the editor is now putting up. So what's a function? A function is a usable line of code that performs particular tasks. So why function creates abstraction? Now, what does this abstraction mean? It means that it takes away implementation details of the code. In using a function, what we care about is what the function does and the output it produces. An example of a function is, take for instance, the sine function in the math module. I've not explained what module is, but okay, let me just explain it. A module is like a combination of similar functions. So in the math module, there is an inbuilt function. You have the sine function. So that's what that sine function does is the same thing the sine operator does in a calculator. So with that sine function now, you can now perform sine operations without knowing how that function is implemented. Just imagine I tell you to write a function that implements a sine function. Just take some minutes to think about how you're going to implement it. I'm sure it's going to be like very hard to come up with the implementation of that code in like 5 minutes. But with that math function, that sine function, you can just use that. You can use the sine function without knowing how that stuff is implemented. So that's why we should care about functions. Another reason you should care about functions is that as a programmer, function like gives you more power because you're able to use other people's code in your own code. You don't need to know how it's implemented, you just use it. And now what you worry about is the creative aspect of coding. That's how to combine different functions to produce a product. Take for instance, the other I was trying to build a calculator app for web. Then I was even thinking of, because I'm new to JavaScript, and I was thinking of how to implement this sine function. It like took me time to to implement the sine function. Now you have to start going back to mathematics. You have to start thinking about Taylor series and other stuff. Start implementing it with normal JavaScript code. But then if a sine function already exists in JavaScript, I won't have to start thinking about how to implement that stuff. I'll just go on to use all the math functions that made available either by JavaScript or a third-party library to implement that my web calculator app. So that's why functions are important. And functions are like building materials for coding. So all you have to do is just code. So basically that's all about why we need functions. So I'll go on to open the next file. the next thing we're going to do now is how do we define this function now? Assuming you search everywhere and the functionality you want to create is not available online. It's not, no third party has like created it. It's not an inbuilt function. So you have to know how to create your own function. And apart from that, know how to create function means that you also know how to use function, because when you're creating function now, you see that you have arguments, parameters, return values, but assume you don't know how to create functions, you'll be limited in your use of functions, because some third-party function require you to they have various arguments you need to impute to fully utilize that function. But if you don't know that functions collect any amount of argument and all that, you'll not be able to use that function fully. Take for instance now, the project we're going to be doing at the end of this section is to automate WhatsApp, and we're going to use a function or a module called kit. And assuming we don't know what arguments and parameters are, that means we're not going to be able to interact with that module, because when we import that module and start using it, we're going to read the documentation now for the guy that created the module is going to explain how to use it. Assuming we don't know about arguments and all, we're not going to be able to impute all the information for that this thing to work. So let's see how we define functions, so we know we'll probably be good in using them. So a function definition begins with what's called the def statement. I believe everybody knows what a statement is. So this is the def statement here. You can see my screen. So the first thing when you start defining your function is to type this def keyword. Then the next thing is the name of the function. And naming of function follows the same convention as naming of variable. That means your function name cannot start with a number. It's not advised to start with a symbol. It's advisable your function name starts with a letter. Your function name can have a number and symbols in between the function name. Then followed by parentheses. That's if your function is not going to utilize arguments, you just what you just need is two parentheses. But assuming you're going to utilize arguments, something has to go in between these parentheses, but let's leave that one for now. So after the function name, the next thing you do is to end this statement with a semicolon. So after you end it with semicolon, you press enter. Then some what's it called? Text editors are going to automatically indent the code for you. But assuming you're using raw editors that don't have all this intelligence, you have to use a uniform indentation. And if you don't know what indentation means, it means the number of spacing after the number of spacing has to be uniform. For me, I'm using a tab spacing throughout. So for this function, this is a simple function that just prints hello world and how are you today. So for creating a function that utilizes parameters and arguments, first of all, we're going to define what parameters and arguments are. Arguments are the values you give to a function when you're calling the function. I believe we are already familiar with some functions like print function, which is an input function, and length function. You give them some values. So those values are what we call arguments. On the other hand, parameters are when you're creating a function, you give inside the parentheses, like for this one now, a and b are the parameters. But when you're calling the function, those values you give it is the argument. And Python automatically creates variables, even though it's not shown here. So there's a variable called a in this function now that is automatically created by Python, and it's called a parameter. And the value of that variable is the argument that the function gets when it's being called. Are you guys still with me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So calling a function is as simple as just typing the name of the function followed by parentheses and giving it the number of arguments you need. So over to what a return value and a statement is now. This function here now, assuming we try to call this function and assign the output to a variable, just like we can do when we do len of a string and assign it to v. We're going to see that when we try to print that value, when we try to print v, we get the length of the variable, the length of the string, sorry. But here now, this test function here doesn't have a return statement. So when we try to assign, when we try to create a variable and assign a value of, down here now, I created a variable called v. I created a variable called b and try to assign it a value of the result of calling this function. When I print v, I'm going to see something that is surprising. Let me run the code. So this white button I printed be this non stuff, or this variable type called none. The reason is that according to Python's documentation, for you to have a return value is the value that that function returns after it's been like run. If you don't have a return statement, that function is not going to be able to return the computation it did. That's when you assign a variable. When you assign it to a variable, it's not going to, by default, what it's going to return is the variable type of none. But for it to return a variable, for it to return a value that is the result of that computation, we have to tell the Python code to return that the value of the computation, which is this is that same code now, but I updated it. If we run this stuff again, we're going to see that this second part where I said it should print k actually returns the value, and it printed 44, which you can see here, compared to that first code that I just printed none. So the next thing we're going to be treating is how to call a function from a different Python file. Let's say you have two Python files, and in one of them you have a function you want to call in your second Python file. Seems this file is empty. Okay, let's say we want to call, since we already have a function here, let's say we want to call test3 function. This function on this file, we want to call it here. What we need to do is to import the name of the file into this function. It is now received.
Wait, is this for calling function from an external Py file or from main file?
Hello, Olivia. Hello, can you hear me, Olivia?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. You've answered my question already. Fine, thank you.
Hello. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is to call this function from a separate Python file. So what I have to do is to from this file, oh, from this file, import, or that's what I'm doing is to import all the functions. Import star, which means all.
Recording in progress.
Why is it sound different? Let me just do this from here. Don't know, I'm not. Oh shit, def is the def is a keyword, so I cannot call it. Okay, that's the reason. Oh. Let me copy that function into this other one. So this is the function I want to call in this. So why it wasn't working before was that def was a keyword. So I even forgot I was trying to. Def was a keyword. So I'll say from test. Import. What this line means is that this test.py imports all the functions. So after this line of code, I can now call this function here, this test function. So let me save it and run this function file.
Tochi, why are you using tests? I didn't get the explanation, sorry.
Am I getting an error? Okay, I didn't save this Python, this test file, so I think that's the reason. Let me run it again.
Oh, okay, you created a new file.
You can see
You're
now
importing.
that I imported this test3.function, this test3 function into a separate function file just by using this statement. From test, which is the name of the Python file, import all the functions files in this test.py. Then I was able to use that function file I needed, test3.function, and give it an argument. So that's how you import. That's how you import a function from a different function file. Hello, are you still confused, Olivia?
No, I'm no longer confused. Thank you. So I guess the reason why you were not able to use that dev because
Hello,
that's
I've already
like
explained.
a keyword or something.
Dev.py is just like what's it called? A slide for me. All these Python files. I was using it to explain.
Okay.
I was using it to explain stuff, and I'm going to make it available to you guys after the class, after this section, sorry. Do you guys get what I said about importing a function from a different function file? Okay, so I'll go on to the next step on our outline. which is the Python package manager. So I'm going to, this is the slide I created for it. I'm going to open the script file. So I'd like to throw a question. What do you guys think is the package manager, Python package manager?
Okay, I think Python package manager is maybe a place where files are stored. That's
Hello?
Python files are being stored. Maybe let's say you want to get but you want to use Python and build an app. The place you can go and get your source files or anything.
Hello, are you guys there?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, so I tell is correct. The Python package manager is just like your Google Play and iPhone store and all that. But this Python package manager is for Python and is where Google stores all the packages, especially packages of third-party developers. That's what's a package? A package is like a folder that contains different modules. And I already explained that a module is a folder that contains different files. And those files contains different like functions and other that we can call and use in our code. So a package manager is just like the Google Play and iPhone store where you can download all these packages. But then you can only use this package manager on the command line using a software called pip. So if you have a laptop, you can go to your command line and check if you have this pip installed by typing pip -- version. You can say I have the latest version of pip installed. But if you don't have pip installed on your laptop, to get pip, just go to your command line and type python-m install pip -- upgrade. So since I already have pip installed, it doesn't do anything. But if after typing pip dash dash version and you don't have pip on your system, what you have to do is Python dash m install pip dash dash upgrade pip to get Python installed on your pip installed on your system. And after installing pip, what do you want to do next? What you want to do next is to start downloading useful packages. Like I said earlier, functions are like building blocks. So if you can download functions that are going to make you focus on doing the creative part of coding instead of trying to doing the implementation part of coding. For example, we're going to install a package or module that allows us to automate WhatsApp. That's you can send messages automatically using your system and instead of manually. So since they've already implemented most of the functions, what we're going to do is just play around with the function.
Sorry, can you recap? I think I missed you somewhere. I think when you were talking about pip.
Okay. I said Python package manager is just like Google Play Store or iPhone Store, where you download. For Google Play Store, you just download apps and other stuff, and that one is like a graphical user interface. But then with Python, the Google pip, which is the package manager for Python, is used to download all the packages that Python needs to execute the code. What are packages? Packages are just like group of similar modules, and modules are a group of similar functions. And I told you if we have functions written by other people, we'll just focus on try to create products. That's the creative aspect of coding instead of implementation aspect. We leave all those other guys to do the implementation aspect. And I told you if you want to check if you have pip installed, what you do is you go to your terminal, command Windows R, type cmd here and press OK. I already have my terminal open. Then do pip dash dash version. So for me, I already have pip installed, so it just brought out the version for me. Assuming you don't have pip installed, it's going to tell you that pip is not a recognized command. So the next thing you do is to install pip. Assuming you don't have it installed, you do Python -m install pip dash upgrade pip. I already have pip installed. That's why this command just brought out the version for me instead of.
Okay, mine is showing is not recognized. Do I need like internet to download it or something? Or I can just okay, so if you said I should type to download it, you said something about that
Python -m. Look at the code there.